the idea of just some stranger on the internet saying, hey, come try out my new app doesn't fully bring great vibes with it. So I took it with a grain of salt. Hello and welcome to Talk Ag to Me, the podcast dedicated to improving ag literacy around the globe. I'm your host, Brendan Black, and welcome to what I can officially call Season 2 of Talk Ag to Me. I know I went on a somewhat lengthy hiatus for the past few months, and I haven't really posted any episodes in a long time, so I thought it was a good time as any to take a step back from both my projects and all of everything I've been working on and kind of take a glance at it from the outsider's point of view, get some perspectives from other podcasters, and I'll talk about that more later, and kind of get an idea of where I wanted to go with these projects. So I'm officially back, and I'm excited to show you guys all the content, all the ideas that I have planned out. And yeah, I just wanted to bring up this new Season 2 to talk about what we're going to be focusing on over the next few weeks on Talk Ag to Me. So first and foremost, the primary focus of the Season 2 is on consumers. Not just teaching consumers about agriculture, but actually listening to and having conversations with those consumers. Bringing on people who don't come from agricultural backgrounds, who want to talk about agriculture, learn more about it, ask questions, and kind of just banter about things that are all based around ag. I've actually already recorded an episode with somebody who comes from a less agricultural background, and we had a great conversation. It was kind of fun and goofy, and he asked some great questions, and I was very excited to find someone who's actually actively curious and intrigued by what I was talking about in terms of agriculture. So that was kind of the inspiration for bringing in this new focus in Season 2 of agricultural literacy being more than just bringing information into the air for somebody to potentially maybe find and just having interviews that maybe someone that is not from an agricultural background might stumble upon. It wasn't really productive for what I was trying to do. I had great conversations. I had great interviews with people from the agricultural industry that I was very excited about. And I think that those interviews are great foundations for my new audience that is actively engaging with my content. However, in order to get that audience to grow and in order to truly see if my content is working, I need to have these conversations with consumers and really see where their heads are at. So because of that, I saw this as an opportunity to reach out to other podcasters and get involved in more podcasting communities to try to get some involvement and some conversations going with people who don't quite have that agricultural background. And that's where the next few episodes are going to be taking us. So as I mentioned, these agricultural episodes that I've been having in the past of interviews with farmers and other people involved in the ag industry, absolutely positive. I'm looking forward to doing more of them in the future. They're going to be slowed down a little bit, but I already have a few planned out that I want to do, and I'm very excited to see where those things go. But for the time being, I want to focus more on these consumer conversations because I've been having some really, really good ones. Like I mentioned earlier, I've been involved in the new podcasting communities. I'm going to talk on that briefly, but mostly I've been looking for new people to give me feedback on what I've been doing with the podcast. Having the feedback I've had so far has been great, but it's been a little too little for what I've been really looking for growth and development of my platform. So I reached out to podcasting communities on the internet, got involved in a few, met some really great people that had some great advice and really helped me understand the principles of podcasting and how to fully develop my platform and understand that my message isn't one that is lost on people. That's not something that people aren't going to be interested in. It's just a matter of getting people to hear it in the first place. So being involved in these podcasting communities has really helped me. It's helped me understand how podcasting works. It's helped me understand my audience and how to grow it. And it's helped me make networks and connections I'm incredibly grateful for, and I'll be definitely holding on to as time goes on. So let me go into this a little bit more in depth. After joining the podcast community and actually giving my own advice to a couple new podcasters and helping out some people by doing mock interviews and by teaching people my interview style and how I like to hear other podcasters sound, I was actually reached out to by a few members of different communities about doing podcasts, about being on other people's podcasts, about engaging in these kinds of conversations and having them on my podcast. And one individual named Tom reached out to me, and he actually was wanting me to help out with a beta for a new app that he was trying to launch. It was called Voice Hub. I was a little skeptical at first. I will admit. I actually have told them several times that the idea of just some stranger on the internet saying, "Hey, come try out my new app," doesn't fully bring great vibes with it. So I took it with a grain of salt, but I decided to, sure, I'll help out with in any way I can. And I said, go ahead and sign me up. I'll look into it and I'd be happy to help out. So I checked out his website. Everything seemed legit. I looked at his pages on social medias. Everything seemed fine. It seemed like he was a guy I could trust. And I joined the VoiceHub community, and like I said, it is in its beta. It was actually just launched a couple weeks ago, and it's very, very exciting to see a new and developing community as it grows and changes over time. I've been actively involved in the VoiceHub community since its launch now. I've been on nearly every day having conversations with people and getting involved in live groups and all that sort of thing. And really the best part about VoiceHub, it's not text posts like it is on Facebook or Instagram or other sites. VoiceHub is entirely vocal. You can make text comments, but for the most part, if you want to post something, you have to speak it. And that is the most brilliant idea I've ever heard. And for anyone who knows me, knows that I love talking, obviously, that I love speaking, that I love hearing other people speak, that I love the engagement of vocal conversation. I think it's a very vitally important aspect of our day-to-day interactions that's often lost upon many people. So this idea was golden. I thought it was the greatest idea I've ever heard. I repeatedly have told Tom how grateful I am to be part of this beta and how much potential I think this program and platform has as a whole. And I think it's really, really cool. So I got really involved in VoiceHub, had some great conversations with people, and I brought to the table something that they weren't expecting, and that I think that all of us are reasonably able to say we did not see coming. I brought agriculture to the table. I brought public speaking to the table. I said, hey guys, these are my skill and knowledge bases. This is what I can bring to the table. I can help out any way you need me to. I'm happy to help out anyone who needs their community growth. I'm happy to help out anyone who needs advice on how to start a podcast, or who is looking for a guest, or who, this, that, or the other thing. I loved engaging in these conversations, but when they heard that I was involved in agriculture, they had a very interesting response that I was not ready for. A lot of them didn't really know what I meant at first, so I explained myself. I explained that I had the podcast, that I grew up in an agricultural community, that I've been involved in many different agricultural activities, all sorts of the sort. And I mentioned to them that I run this podcast, and they were really intrigued by the idea. I had hour-long conversations, sometimes several hour-long conversations with some of these individuals for multiple days. We would jump on and have these talks about agriculture. They were so interested in the idea, and it kind of brought some very interesting perspectives to my mind that I wasn't aware of. I was always under the impression that consumers had a negative perspective of agriculture, that either they opposed it, that they were indifferent to it, that they didn't think about it enough, that they just kind of didn't care. Or if they did care, they cared in the wrong way. They just negatively believed agriculture was not a valuable industry to have around. This interaction proved me wrong. Being involved in these conversations, talking to these people about what I found to be my passion, was one of the most eye-opening experiences I've ever had. And I learned very quickly, consumers are just as curious about agriculture as agriculturalists are eager to tell them about it. This communication gap that we've had for so long is mostly irrelevant because it's not a difficult gap to breach. It's not that people don't want to hear about agriculture, it's that they're just not hearing about agriculture, so they don't know what to care about. They're being fed whatever they read on social media, which we all know is not reliable, but they're not being fed what's actually the truth. They're not being fed the stories from the agriculturalists. And that was very inspirational for me. While I said it was eye-opening, it definitely was. I think that there's a lot to be learned about that very concept, that it's not that people are opposed to what we're trying to teach them, it's that they're just not hearing the message properly. So I saw this as an opportunity to really expand on my focus of this season 2, consumer conversations, and I asked a lot of them to be on my podcast to talk to me about what their questions were regarding the ag industry, what they were curious about, what they wanted to learn more about, what they have heard already, what misconceptions they're aware of and what they aren't, and all sorts of different things surrounding that very concept. And what surprised me the most is every single person I've talked to has agreed on the same thing without me even telling them to, and that's that agriculture is vital because everyone needs to eat. they saw that as a universal fact. I didn't even have to tell them that that was something that I was advocating for. They all just agreed to that naturally and said, of course, it's important for us to talk about agriculture. It's so vital to our survival that why would we not think it's a priority? And it almost seemed like they were kind of laughing at themselves for not thinking about it sooner, because it's such a universally important fact that they hadn't considered before. And so it was really interesting to see that interaction, because usually if you tell someone agriculture is vital, they say, oh yeah, I guess that's farmers are cool and all. But these guys actually said, no, food is important. We need to understand where our food comes from. We need to understand the processes, and we need to be able to support those who are growing it, because if we don't, they may not be able to grow it anymore. And they understood that perfectly well without me even mentioning it, which was mind-blowingly amazing. I was very pleased to see that interaction. And so I think that having that in mind is very hopeful. It's great to see that consumers are actually aware of these things, even though we're led to believe that they really aren't, and they just aren't very vocal about them. That all of the anti-agricultural slander that we see on social media is only on social media because it's slander. It's not the norm. It's the instances that are very, very isolated that are just getting blown up on the internet, just like everything else. And so that was really exciting for me to see. I'm very excited to see what's to come with this. I'm very excited to see where the conversations lead us, and where I'm hoping to learn more about not only the ag industry, but the consumer side of the ag industry as well. I'm very curious to see what people's questions are. And so far, I've seen quite a few people ask some incredibly deep and important questions that I hadn't even considered myself before. Some of them I can't even answer half the time. So I say, you know what? That's a great question. Let me find you the answer. Let me shoot an article your way. I've actually in several instances said, I could talk about this to the extent that I know about it, but I don't know everything there is to know about this subject, but I do know someone who does. And I send them articles, I send them podcast episodes, I send them, recommendations for books and videos. I send them all the resources I know of that would teach them about those subjects. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for people who want to know so much that I can't even give them all the answers. And that is exactly what I've been finding, which is really, really exciting. So that's kind of the long and short of what this season 2 is going to be all about. So I'm really hoping you guys are all excited for it. I'm certainly excited for it. It's one of the biggest things happening right now in my life. On top of that, I very likely will be moving to Fresno soon, which is really exciting, but it also means that I will be slowly transitioning into a new style of living with roommates and away from home of all things. So it's going to be a bit of an adjustment, but I'm excited for it. There's a lot of change going on in my life right now, which is both exciting and also terrifying. But because of that, I'm going to be pre-recording a bunch of episodes ahead of time and having them play out as I am making my move. That way I can focus on just moving and settling in and getting a job before I start focusing on getting interviews together and recording and trying to get all that stuff out again. So that is not really important for anyone who's listening to this, because they're all going to see it, at the same rate no matter what. I just wanted to kind of let you guys know ahead of time that if anyone recommends videos I do, I will do them eventually. It's just a matter of, I probably have 10 or 12 or 15 episodes scheduled ahead of time before I even get to that comment even being available on that video. So I just wanted to have that available. But just the same, anyone who has recommendations for people they think I should have on, topics I should talk about, what should I tell consumers about agriculture? I'll get into this in another episode, but one of the things that always catches the consumers by surprise and they're always wanting to learn more about is robots. They didn't know that agriculture uses robots, which is really fun, and that's a great conversation I'm going to have in the future. But that's just stuff like that. Like, what should I be telling consumers about? What conversations should I be having? What kind of misconceptions should I be alleviating in these conversations? Let me know your feedback on what you think about this whole project, on everything that's going into this, and I very much look forward to your guys' interaction, the community that I'm trying to build here with consumers and agriculturalists working together and having these conversations, and the consumers that I'm talking to that originally didn't even think they knew about agriculture until they start talking about it and they realize how much more they know than many other people. So that I'm out of breath now, but that's about all I have to say on behalf of season 2 of Talk Agdemy. I'm extremely excited to see where this goes. I'm looking forward to every minute of these conversations, both the agricultural and with the consumer. And thank you all so much for tuning in and for sticking around as long as you have. I look forward to anyone who's just joined my community, and if so, welcome. This is Talk Academy. I'm Brendan. I talk a lot and really fast, and I wouldn't blame you if you had to slow down the episode to listen to what I'm saying. I need to catch a breath every now and then. But that is all I have for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you tune in next week to catch another episode talking about these same topics. And then very soon, I'm going to have the first interview with a non-agricultural guest on this show. And that's incredibly exciting. It's a great interview. I've already recorded it. It's with a fantastic guest that has his own podcast I'm going to have you guys check out because it's amazing, and we have a very fun conversation. So I hope you're all looking forward to that as much as I am, but that's all I have for you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and don't forget, if you ate today, thank a farmer.